Chapter 561. There were so many stalls at the marketplace that Gavin had a hard time choosing what to eat. Ultimately, he decided to get the same thing as Zachary. "I'll have some barbecue skewers too. Can I have a milkshake too, Mommy?" asked Jessie. Marissa could barely keep up with the kids' requests. "What about you, Tim?" she asked, beaming. Tim had never visited a place like this. He wanted to scratch his head, but both his hands were being held by Gavin and Zachary respectively. He peered at his surroundings. "Everything looks and smells so good. Barbecue skewers, please," he replied, going with something he had not tried before. He was familiar with all the other food items. "I've had oxtail soup at one of our neighbors' places. It was good." Marissa nodded. "I'll go buy whatever you guys want." "Mommy, I want a milkshake too," Jasper added with a smile. Marissa glanced at all the children. "I'll get you all one each, then." The children squealed in excitement, causing more people to stare at them. Such adorable kids. All 6 of them look around the same age. They also look so alike. Are they actually sextuplets? Maybe they're not actually siblings, but cousins of the same age. If you stare at them long enough, they'd all start to look alike. Good point. One of them looks extra tan too. He's obviously not from the same parents. Marissa frowned as she heard that and politely corrected the passers-by. "They're all my kids." "Oh, that many of them. And what about it? All 6 of them," the woman declared proudly. IVF. Marissa didn't know how to respond at this point. Naturally conceived, Benjamin chimed in unhappily. With that, the people stopped asking questions and continued to admire the children. "You guys are amazing to be able to have 6 at a time." The crowd couldn't contain their adoration for the children, all of whom had exquisite features. "They're so cute. Oh, how I'd love to carry one of them home," a young woman gushed. Jasper smiled at the passers-by. "Oh, God, he even smiled at me. My heart can't take it anymore." Seeing people praise him made Jasper beam with delight. Jessie, too, beamed at the crowd. "This one's a girl, right? She's adorable." Upon hearing that, Benjamin frowned and gazed at Jessie. "She does look like a girl." There were dimples on her face when she smiled. Gavin and Zachary weren't as bubbly, but the crowd liked them too. Meanwhile, Oliver's eyes wandered as he calculated how much money they would have to spend on their food. Tim kept his head low. He rarely visited places like these, so he wasn't used to being stared at. "Don't be afraid, Tim. We'll protect you." Marissa petted his head. The boy nodded as his eyes lit up. With a smile, Marissa went to buy their food. Benjamin walked toward her to place an arm around her waist, clearly trying to indicate to everyone that she belonged to him. Marissa glanced at the man and tried to evade him, but to no avail. "What are you doing? Be careful. Someone might bump into you," Benjamin murmured into her ear as he led her forward. The woman's heart began to race. "I am being careful." She turned to look at her children, only to see them eagerly watching her and Benjamin's interaction. "Stay close, sweethearts. Don't fall behind." "We won't fall behind even if you do, Mommy," Zachary teased. "You'd better follow us closely, or we might end up having to look for you if you get lost." Marissa's lips twitched. "How could I fall behind? That brat." The children burst into laughter. Marissa shot daggers at them, albeit in a joking manner. "You won't get to eat anything if you fall behind." The children fell silent in response. Chapter 562. The bodyguard returned with Benjamin's coat and sunglasses. The latter wore his own pair of sunglasses and gave the previous ones back to the guard, who then put them back on and stood nearby. Some were fortunate enough to have caught a glimpse of Benjamin's face while he was switching glasses. The men felt ashamed of themselves, whereas the women began to drool as their jaws fell to the floor. "That guy looks so hot. I just saw his face too. The kids look just like him. Those features, those charming eyes. He looks way better than most male celebrities out there. Who on earth is he? He even has bodyguards with him. Is he a superstar? We would have seen him before if he really were a star, so he's definitely not one. His looks are just too unmatched. He'd be crazy famous if he really were a star. Oh, my God, he's so hot. His wife is so lucky to have such a gorgeous partner like him," along with 6 adorable kids. I'm so jealous. Benjamin's eyes twinkled. Wife. His gaze fell on the woman next to him, only to see her frowning in speechlessness. He then took his coat and wrapped it around her waist to hide her curves. Orissa froze. What are you doing? It's so hot out here. Keep it on, the man instructed while pushing her hands away from the coat. Can't you see all those guys staring at you? Orissa glanced around and noticed many people turning their heads as they walked past her. Then, she laughed. You know, I see more women looking at you instead, with their predatory eyes. Would you like something bitter to go with that jealousy? Benjamin teased as he pulled her back into his arms. Orissa was at a loss for words. What a narcissist this guy is. I'd prefer something salty, thank you very much. The children behind couldn't help but laugh, including Tim. Benjamin gritted his teeth. In that case, I'll have Edwin buy more salt so you can eat as much of it as you want. Orissa smiled at him tauntingly. And what about you, Graham? Would you like some salt too? Or do you prefer something bitter? The man stared at her intently with his narrowed eyes. You're asking me what I want to eat. His warm breath fanned her cheeks, making her feel all tingly. He was being so intimate. She blinked before quickly looking away. Seeing the food they were looking for straight ahead, she placed an order for the children and bodyguards. Thank you, Miss York. Don't mention it. Orissa then bent over and distributed 1 skewer to each child. Just one, Mommy, that's not enough. Jasper whined as he took a huge bite of his barbecued sausage. The woman flicked his forehead gently. Slow down. It tastes better when you eat it slowly. It's delicious. Jasper took a huge whiff of his skewer. It smelled so good. Unable to resist the temptation, Orissa decided to order another set of skewers. Here, she gave the rest to Benjamin, who merely glanced at them. You can have them. What a weirdo. Oh, well, his loss. The woman gave the bodyguards more skewers and prepared to feed her children more when they were done with what they had now. It's been so long since I last ate these. I used to love them so much back when I was still in school, Orissa reminisced. I used to buy these with a group of friends. I could only get one each time, but it was so gratifying. She looked so calm as she recalled the past. Why did you only get one? Asked Benjamin. Orissa turned to him. Because I couldn't afford any more than that. Despite seeing her smile, Benjamin felt a pang in his heart. Tim felt sorry for her too. So, she used to be poor too. It must have been tough for her. We have money now, Mommy. You can eat as many skewers as you want. Oliver said to her. Really, sweetheart? Asked Orissa. Of course. The boy grinned. Thank you, sweetheart. How about you pay for these skewers, then? Oliver's smile instantly froze. Then, he turned to Benjamin. The only person who wasn't eating. Isn't it Mr. Graham's treat? Chapter 563. When Benjamin saw how much Oliver treasured money, he did not know whether to laugh or cry. How much is it? 8.4, replied Oliver quickly. Benjamin took out a credit card from his wallet. Orissa and the other 6 were speechless. Mr. Graham, they only accept cash or online payment. Benjamin glanced at the stall and realized that he was telling the truth. The boss was looking at him weirdly. Pursing his lips, Benjamin turned his head around and shot a look at his bodyguard. The bodyguard quickly took out 100 in cash. Benjamin grabbed it and passed it to the boss. Keep the change. Delighted, the boss replied, thank you. Wait, no, you need to give back 16. Protested Oliver. When everyone stared at him, he became embarrassed. Why don't we get 4 more sausages instead? Sure. The boss had no qualms about that either and quickly gave Oliver 4 sausages. When he saw how adorable the 6 kids were, he took out another 2 sausages. I'm giving you 2 more for free. Thank you. We'll visit you again next time. Oliver grinned so widely that his eyes became crinkled. Thank you. The other 5 kids thanked the boss too. You're welcome. The boss gazed at them with a smile, completely smitten with how adorable they were. Flashing everyone a toothy smile, Oliver told the other 5 kids, it's just nice. We can have 1 more sausage each. When Orissa saw the kids sharing so happily, she could not help but smile too. Glancing at the kids, Benjamin reminded them, "Don't finish everything in one go. We need to eat other things too. Mr. Graham, we have a huge appetite." Jasper had already finished 2 sausages, with oil glistening on his lips. Benjamin grabbed a piece of tissue paper and wiped his mouth. "Be neater when you eat." Jasper stuck his tongue out and snuck a peek at Arissa. "Mommy's mouth is oily too." When Arissa met Benjamin's gaze, she quickly wiped her mouth with her hand and turned around. The kids laughed when they saw how embarrassed she was. A glint flashed across Benjamin's eyes. He walked over, grabbed her hand, and wiped it. Arissa's heart skipped a beat. "You eat like a child. Looks like the kids learned how to eat so dirtily from you." Benjamin chided her. Arissa rebuked. "I'm not normally like this. I'm very clean." Benjamin pinched the corners of her mouth before bringing his long fingers to her. "What is this?" When Arissa saw the oil glistening on his fingers, she blushed and mumbled, "Everyone's mouth would get dirty after eating." "Ha!" Benjamin laughed mockingly. That made Arissa feel even more embarrassed. "Kids, let's go in front and buy some more food," shouted Arissa as she brought the children to continue buying food. Benjamin did not eat anything and merely followed them. When it was crowded, he would even carry 2 or 3 kids, preventing them from being bumped into by others. "Why aren't you eating? Are you not hungry?" Having eaten so much food, Arissa felt embarrassed. After all, Benjamin was the one paying for everything. If he did not eat anything and they were the only ones stuffing themselves, they would feel guilty. "I'm not used to eating while walking," replied Benjamin coolly. The corners of Arissa's lips twitched. "Why is this man so different from the ordinary folks? These street snacks taste better when you eat it while walking. You should experience it." Behind the sunglasses, Benjamin watched as she chattered away. A glint flashed across his eyes. "Don't talk when you eat. How boring." Glancing behind, she noticed a barbecue skewer store. "Look after them. I'll go and buy some food." After reminding Benjamin, she went over to buy some barbecue skewers. The 6 kids were about to follow her when Benjamin stopped them. "Stay here. I'll go over." The kids were stunned. Chapter 564. When Benjamin walked over, the kids were quite happy. However, they could not help but complain about it. Shaking his head, Jasper remarked, "As expected, Mr. Graham can't leave Mommy for even a second." Oliver agreed, "Haha, Mr. Graham's treating Mommy differently now." Looking at both of them, Zachary did not rebuke. "Mommy told Daddy to look after us, but he instructed us to stay here and went to follow her instead. Does he want some alone time with her? If Daddy helps Mommy carry the food, that'll look even better on him," said Gavin matter-of-factly. Jesse chimed in, "Mr. Graham probably would, right?" Tim stared at them before looking at Benjamin. When Arissa saw Benjamin coming over, she frowned. "If you're coming here, what about the kids? The bodyguards are looking after them." Grabbing her hand, Benjamin led her through the crowd. Arissa glanced at him holding her hand, then back at his handsome face. Happiness filled her. "Is it this barbecue skewers store?" Benjamin glanced around and saw a stall with the word, "barbecue." "Yeah, this is it." Excited, Arissa pulled her over. Benjamin frowned when he saw the food on the grill. "Are you sure that this is yummy?" "It's delicious." Arissa missed it a lot. When she was overseas, she rarely had the chance to eat food like that. Remembering that there was still other food, she only ordered a few servings. "Aren't you going to order more?" reminded Benjamin upon noticing that she had only ordered 4 portions despite there being 6 kids. "This is enough. We can eat them together later. There's other food too," replied Arissa as she turned her head around. Benjamin nodded. While he watched the stall owner grill the food, he frowned. His frown deepened further when he saw the other sauces. Just when Arissa was about to pay, Benjamin stopped her and passed the money over instead. "Keep the change." "Sorry, but I'm short of 10, added the boss after a slight moment of surprise. Feeling embarrassed, Arissa quickly paid the remaining amount. "I'm sorry, he doesn't know the price." Arissa held the food with one hand and dragged Benjamin away quickly with the other. Having been humiliated, Benjamin frowned. "It's that expensive. There was not a lot of food, to begin with." Looking at him, Arissa laughed. Since you don't usually eat it, you wouldn't know. It used to be really cheap, but its price has increased due to inflation. Meat cost 5 per skewer and the vegetables cost 3 per skewer. In total, one portion would cost 50. I added 2 meat options, so it added up to 210. Benjamin pursed his lips in disdain. It doesn't look yummy. The food is cooked over the same grill over and over again. When Arissa heard how picky he was, she did not know how to explain that if he kept nitpicking at the food, he would not even dare to eat it. Once you have a taste of it, you'll know whether it's tasty. It's so unhealthy. Benjamin glared at her. Do you usually eat food like these with the kids? Feeling a headache coming, Arissa spun around and faced Benjamin. I couldn't have these overseas. When Benjamin saw how eager she was to eat the food, he pursed his lips. Bring these to the kids first. I'll buy some oxtail soup. As Arissa spoke, she shoved the food into Benjamin's hands. Oxtail soup. He frowned again. Stop. Unable to take it anymore, Arissa gestured for him to fall silent. Stop overthinking and don't follow me anymore. I'll buy it myself. With that, Arissa ran away. Benjamin stood there with a frown as he stared at her intently. He only averted his gaze after she disappeared from his sight. Then, he walked back to the kids. The food that the kids ordered was not done yet. When they saw Benjamin returning with food, they gulped. Hungrily. The corners of Benjamin's lips lifted as an amused look flashed across his eyes. Chapter 565. These are the barbecue skewers. Come and eat them. Benjamin opened the packet before sitting beside Gavin. Barbecue skewers. Standing up, Gavin looked at it and sniffed it. How fragrant. Benjamin cast a glance at him. Zachary smiled brightly. There are 4 portions. That's a lot. He passed Gavin a skewer. Have a bite. They're delicious. After giving 2 skewers to Tim, he passed a skewer each to his siblings. In the end, he started munching on a skewer. Eat up, Tim. When Zachary noticed Tim staring at the skewer, he gently nudged Tim. Nodding, Tim glanced at them and asked softly, aren't we going to wait for Miss York? Benjamin answered his question, your mommy went to buy some oxtail soup. That's great. Jasper and Oliver were elated. Jessie also grinned. While she munched on the food, she exclaimed happily, oxtail soup is tastier than skewers. Yeah, oxtail soup is delicious. Tim, you should have a taste of it later. Shared Jasper with Tim excitedly. Eat up, Tim. You still have more food to eat later, urged Oliver. You don't have to wait for mommy. There's more for her to eat when she comes back. Tim already wanted to eat it when he saw the rest eating so happily. When he lowered his head and took a bite, his eyes lit up. Is it delicious, Tim? Asked Gavin affectionately. Tim glanced at him and nodded. Yeah, there's still pork, meatball, tofu, squid, mutton, prawn, listed Zachary enthusiastically, encouraging Tim to try each of them. Okay, Tim nodded. Tim, do you like spicy or non-spicy food? This is spicy, asked Jasper as he passed his skewer to Tim. Tim's eyes lit up. I like spicy food. Here, Jasper passed a prawn to him. Thank you, I'm not done eating yet. Tim was holding 3 skewers, the most out of the other kids. Since the other kids only had 1 skewer each, he felt embarrassed. Eat up, it's yummy when it's hot, said Oliver with a smile. Everything's yummy when hot, teased Zachary. Oliver laughed. The steam condensed on his glasses, so he could barely see anymore. When Benjamin noticed that, he bent down and took off Oliver's glasses. Oliver raised his head and stared at Benjamin, his vision blurred. Mr. Graham, I can't see after you took off my glasses. Wait, Benjamin wiped the condensation from the glasses before placing them back onto Oliver. Smiling secretly, Oliver said happily, thank you, Mr. Graham. When Arissa returned and saw that the kids had already started eating, she was pleased. Is it yummy, sweethearts? Yeah, replied the 6 kids simultaneously, all overjoyed from the food. When Arissa saw Tim smiling so happily as well, she grinned affectionately. If it's yummy, eat more. She grabbed 2 portions of oxtail soup and called out to the bodyguards, you should sit down and eat too. Pleasantly surprised, the bodyguards looked at Benjamin first before taking the food. "Thank you, Miss York. You're welcome. It's tough on you to keep following us around." Orissa sat beside Jessie, leaving one seat between her and Benjamin. "The oxtail soup is here, sweethearts." When she opened the packet, the fragrance filled the air. Swallowing her saliva unconsciously, Orissa quickly picked up some meat and started eating. "Yummy." Looking at how immersed she was in the food, Benjamin asked, "Is it that yummy?" "It's oxtail. How can she possibly like it?" When Benjamin recalled what it was, he frowned in disdain. Casting him a look, Orissa picked up a piece of oxtail meat. "You'd know that it's delicious just by smelling it. Have a bite." She passed it to him. Staring at it, Benjamin did not really want to eat it. However, Orissa was bold enough to place it beside his lips. The fragrance drifted into his nose, tempting him greatly. Chapter 566. "Hurry up, my arm is sore," urged Orissa, sounding like she was whining. When Benjamin heard her soft voice, his mood improved and he actually took a bite. "How is it? Is it yummy?" She moved closer and stared at him with an eager smile. When Benjamin met her clear gaze, a glint flashed across his eyes. He chewed slightly. The meat tasted extremely fresh, without any stench that he had expected. That surprised him greatly. He had to admit that the oxtail tasted quite decent. "It's not bad." Orissa laughed before giving him the rest of the meat. "Eat up." Sitting at the al fresco seats, Benjamin ate the delicacies which he had never tried before. Orissa placed a bowl of oxtail soup in front of the kids before giving them a serving each. "Eat it while it's hot. Don't burn yourself." "Okay." The 6 kids nodded. With their lips oily from the food, they grinned in satisfaction. Seeing the kids happy, Orissa felt happy too. She continued eating with them. "What barbecued food did you order?" "Chicken wings, eggs, beef, mutton, fish, prawn, chili, noodles, eggplant, corn. And Mommy's favorite oyster," reported Jessie. Looking at the kids, Orissa smiled and said, "You little glutton. Since you ordered so much, you aren't allowed to go home before you finish all the food." "Ha ha. Don't worry, Mommy. We'll finish everything. In fact, there might not be enough to go around," promised Jasper with a pat on his chest. Benjamin pulled out the chair in the middle and sat closer to them. Orissa glanced at him. When she saw him eating attentively, she felt embarrassed. She thought that he wanted to sit closer to her. Unable to control herself, she snuck a few more glimpses of him. He was eating slowly and elegantly. Those were just normal street snacks, but it looked like he was an upper-class man dining at a luxurious restaurant. Then, she glanced at the other kids. Except for Gavin, who was eating as elegantly as Benjamin, the rest were just like her. In comparison to the other two, they were much more brazen and devoured the food quickly. Looks like the kids will have to change their dining habits slowly. It's obvious upon comparison. What are you looking at? Why aren't you eating? Benjamin turned his head around and looked at her. Orissa smiled. It's nothing. Benjamin stared at her for a while before averting his gaze. The food was soon served. The barbecue skewers and oxtail soup on the table had already been finished. When Orissa saw that the kids were actually hungry, she ordered a few more servings. "Tim, try all of them." All the kids were eating free-spiritedly, but Tim did not really dare to take any food. Hence, Orissa took more for him. "Okay." Tim nodded. Orissa smiled affectionately at him. After gazing at him for a while, she continued eating and would occasionally take some food for the kids. Benjamin ate some mutton skewers alongside Orissa and the kids. Just when they were in the middle of eating, a surprised voice rang out. "Isn't that my dear cousin, Orissa?" A man, who was wearing a flamboyant shirt, sauntered over. His eyes lit up when he scrutinized Orissa. "It's really you, Orissa. When did you come back?" Kenneth stared at her lecherously as an annoying smile played on his lips. Shooting a cold glare at Kenneth, Orissa replied coldly, "You've got the wrong person. Please leave and stop blocking the light." Kenneth was standing right in front of the light. When he heard Orissa's contemptuous tone, he did not get angry. Chuckling, he moved aside slightly. "I know it's you, Orissa. Don't deny it. We haven't met in a few years, but why are you acting like strangers toward me? I miss you every day. Your father is really too much. I'll protect you in the future and prevent him from bullying you. Orissa ignored him. Everyone in the York family disgusted her, especially Finley's great-nephew. Chapter 567. Kenneth was the grandson of Finley's elder brother. However, he did not love Orissa like a sibling. Instead, he had disgusting ulterior motives. When Kenneth saw her ignoring him, he glanced around. Upon noticing the 6 kids and a man wearing a pair of sunglasses, he was stunned. Orissa, who is this man? Is he your boyfriend? Kenneth stared at Benjamin disdainfully like a hooligan. Even if your dad sold you, you can't just find a man so casually, right? He's even blind. Why don't you and I? Kenneth started getting touchy. Just when he was about to place his hand on Orissa's shoulder, he withdrew his arm in shock. A skewer had pierced right through his palm, causing blood to splatter all over. Arg! Kenneth howled in pain as he clutched his hand. Meanwhile, Orissa was shocked as she glanced at Benjamin. Did he do it? His expression was frosty. Furious, Kenneth bellowed, "Which bastard?" Benjamin tilted his head slightly with a gloomy expression. Immediately, the bodyguards sitting at the other table moved. They grabbed Kenneth's collar and swung a punch at him. The bodyguards beat him up before warning, "Be more respectful toward Mr. Graham and Miss York." Kenneth curled into a ball on the floor. With his entire face swollen, he glared at Orissa furiously. "Orissa, why didn't you stop them? You even asked them to beat me up." Shooting him a glance, Orissa smirked coldly. "Didn't you deserve the beating? It's all your fault for being so dense. Don't seek trouble with me anymore." When Kenneth met Orissa's stern and hostile gaze, he was stunned. A chill ran down his spine. Smiling appeasingly, he nodded and said, "Okay, okay. Get lost," bellowed Orissa solemnly. Kenneth quickly scrambled to his feet and scampered away. Looking at him escaping so pathetically, Orissa smiled mockingly. She had already wanted to teach that hooligan a lesson. However, as she did not want to scare the kids, she held herself back. To her surprise, Benjamin acted before she did, helping her vent her anger. Even she was surprised at how swift his actions were. If the skewer had not flown past her eyes, she would have thought that the bodyguards did it. "Who's that man?" Benjamin's expression was extremely grim. Orissa could not hide it anymore. "He's the great-nephew of the 2 old women you saw in the shopping mall. He's their brother's great-grandson." Benjamin frowned. How dare he still act like a hooligan? He's either a douchebag or a pervert. Does he treat you like that all the time? When Orissa noticed his frosty look, she shook her head. "We rarely meet. I know that he's a douchebag, so I always avoid him." She remembered that her first time meeting Kenneth was in middle school, when Regan held a banquet after marrying Heather. The moment Kenneth met her, he kept flirting with her. After finding out that they were relatives, he even tried to take advantage of her. When she told Finley about it, she even got scolded for being shameless and seducing her own cousin Kenneth. Even her father, Regan, sided with Finley and defended that douchebag. Unable to find anyone to stand up for her, Orissa was filled with disappointment. When she went to high school, she chose the school that was the furthest away from home. All she wanted to do was to be as far away as possible, so she could avoid going home. When Benjamin heard her call Kenneth a douchebag and heard how disgusted she was, he nodded. "If you meet someone like him in the future, just attack him directly." For some reason, Orissa was mesmerized by Benjamin's crude and violent methods. Some scums will only be afraid of messing with you if you respond to them with violence. If they're vicious, you have to be even more vicious than them. Otherwise, they'll still come seeking trouble with you. "Continue eating." Benjamin patted her head before brushing the non-existent dust away from her shoulders. Orissa glanced at him. He took out a handkerchief and wiped her shoulders gently. Then, he threw it into the rubbish bin directly. She was stunned. Is Benjamin disgusted by how Kenneth almost touched me? The sleeves exposed part of her shoulders, so she looked a bit sexy. Done? Benjamin was only satisfied after adjusting her shirt. Chapter 568. Yeah, Orissa's heart skipped a beat as she thanked him. thank you so much for earlier. That was so satisfying. When Benjamin met her sparkling eyes, a flicker of emotion appeared in his eyes. Were you swooned by my charm? Orissa laughed. Yeah. Blushing, she added, you were quite handsome just now. Benjamin smiled. Am I not usually that handsome? Orissa shot a glance at him. What happened to his aloof personality? The 6 kids stared at them without blinking. Is Daddy flirting with Mommy? Did they forget that we're here too? Mommy, you met that old woman at the shopping mall. Zachary frowned. Why didn't Mommy say anything after coming back in the evening? Yeah. Orissa looked at her son. Oliver and Jasper were furious. Mommy, did she bully you? Orissa was touched. Not wanting them to feel worried, she assured them, no. In fact, I taught them a lesson. Them? Who else was there? Jessie pursed her lips, looking angry. Benjamin glanced at them. Do the 4 kids know about it too? She's with her sister. When I went to buy some clothes for Mary, I bumped into them. They were shameless enough to think that I'm buying clothes for their brother. They didn't want me to give them the clothes, but demanded that I pay for them. They even thought that the clothes I bought for Mary is for them. When I snatched the clothes back, I taught them a lesson too. You should have looked at their expressions. Mommy, were they angry? Jessie widened her sparkling eyes. Orissa nodded before looking at Benjamin. Your daddy even instructed the bodyguards to slap them. Gavin glanced at Benjamin. Did Daddy pick Mommy up? Yeah, replied Benjamin. Knowing that Benjamin helped Orissa teach them a lesson, Gavin was overjoyed. Good job. Zachary, Oliver, and Jasper started to look at Benjamin in a different light. Since those old women are so mean, they deserve to be taught a lesson. Mommy, aren't they at Delmore? Why did they come here? Asked Jasper indignantly. After Orissa explained what happened to them, they understood. It was no wonder that they bumped into Kenneth, that douchebag, here. Luckily, we're with Mommy. Otherwise, she'd be bullied. Mommy, who's that old woman? Gavin knew that the old woman had bullied Orissa, but he did not know what her relationship was with Orissa. Tim was oblivious too. Even though he had been listening all the while, he still had not figured out who that old woman was. A look flashed across Orissa's eyes as she spat through gritted teeth. She's my grandma. Gavin widened his eyes. Even Tim was filled with disbelief. Mommy's grandma bullies her, but my grandma dotes on me so much. Mommy, why is she bullying you? Aren't you her granddaughter? Gavin could not understand it. After all, his grandpa showered him with a lot of affection. When Orissa saw how naive the kids were, she did not really want to share much about Finley's bad deeds. Maybe she just doesn't like me. In the past, she did not know why Finley hated her so much. She could not figure out her father, Regan, either. The only explanation she could think of was that some people were born evil. It would be wishful thinking to hope that they would be kind. Mommy, you're such a nice person. They are definitely bad people, protested Gavin furiously. If they're not evil, they wouldn't have bullied Mommy. They chased her out. A grim expression crossed Zachary's face. That old woman and her son are both evil, criticized Oliver. Gritting his teeth, Jasper snapped, they're so evil. If I see them again, I won't let them off the hook. Yeah, I'll teach them a lesson on behalf of Mommy. Jessie chimed in angrily. Those shameless people. Miss York, if you meet a bad person next time, you must tell us. We'll help you. Tim frowned, wanting to stand up for her too. Chapter 569. Okay. Orissa was touched and amused by how indignant the kids were. All right, let's stop mentioning those annoying people. Let's quickly finish eating and go back home to rest. Nodding obediently, the kids ate faster. This chicken wing is for you. Orissa gave Benjamin a chicken wing before chewing on one herself. Elated, Benjamin replied gently, okay. Orissa shot a look at him and smiled. Huh, why is that man wearing a pair of sunglasses when eating supper? Can he see? He might be blind. That's why he has to wear sunglasses in the day and at night. Yeah, I think so too. It's such a pity for that beautiful lady. She's actually together with a blind man. Benjamin had a keen hearing. When he heard the discussion a few tables away, a gloomy look crossed his face. That hooligan who pestered Orissa earlier said that I'm blind too. Since they were sitting in the direction of the wind, Orissa could vaguely hear some of the conversations. When she sensed that Benjamin's vibe was quite off, she snuck a peek at him. His expression was tense and extremely frosty. Gulping, she averted her gaze. However, Benjamin turned around and looked at her. An unhappy tone crept into his deep voice as he asked, "Do I look like I'm blind?" Orissa flinched, wishing to make her existence as invisible as possible. Unfortunately, Benjamin confronted her with that question. She scratched her nose, not knowing how to answer that question. "Mr. Graham, you really look like you're blind. Who'd wear sunglasses when eating at night?" mocked Gavin coolly as he shot a look of disdain at Benjamin. Since he had grown up with Benjamin, he was much bolder. While the other kids laughed secretly, Benjamin glared at his son harshly behind the sunglasses. When the other bodyguards sitting at the other table heard Gavin's comment, they took off their sunglasses silently. "Take it down," Orissa suggested to Benjamin softly. It was better to take the sunglasses off if he did not want to be misunderstood. However, he insisted on wearing them. His looks were already attracting people's attention. Now that he was wearing sunglasses at night, he stood out from the crowd. Anyone would notice him immediately. Frowning, Benjamin took off his sunglasses. Now, everyone was no longer casting doubtful looks at him and wondering if he was blind. Instead, they were staring at him like they were love-struck. A grim look appeared on Benjamin's face. After a while, he wore the sunglasses again. Orissa was speechless. Meanwhile, Kenneth was glaring in her direction from a corner. His gaze was filled with resentment. "Damn it, who's that man in sunglasses? He even has bodyguards. Looks like he's a gangster." Kenneth shuddered. Since when did Orissa, that bitch, get to know such a formidable person? Staring at the heartwarming scene, Kenneth gritted his teeth. He clutched his arm and rushed to the hospital. If his arm became paralyzed, he would definitely not let Orissa off the hook. Cursing viciously, Kenneth went to the hospital to get his arm bandaged. At the same time, Finley called Regan, who was all the way at Delmore. "Regan, I bumped into that little bitch. Do you know how she treated me? She got someone to beat me up. My face is still swollen and my teeth got knocked off," complained Finley furiously. "Regan, you must teach that bitch a lesson for me." "Mom, who are you talking about?" Regan's confused voice sounded. He did not know who Finley was referring to. "Who would dare to bully my mother? Who else could it be? It's that bitch, Orissa. Now that she's all grown up, she became so much bolder. That ungrateful bitch. She actually instructed someone to beat me up. She no longer sees me as her grandmother. My life is so sad. Now that I've been bullied by my granddaughter, I'm too humiliated to meet anyone in the future," scolded Finley as she sobbed. "Mom, did you bump into Isa?" "Where?" asked Regan anxiously, suppressing his anger. He was not angry over his mother scolding his daughter, but that his daughter had hit her. How dare she hit her elder? Chapter 570, at North Stream. "Didn't I tell you that I'm here to celebrate your uncle's birthday? I went to the shopping mall with your aunt to buy some clothes for him. Then, I bumped into her. She dressed up so well. Yet, not only did she not buy us any clothes, but she also snatched them back. Then, she got a man to come over and pushed me to the ground. She even instructed someone to beat me up. Regan, we worked so hard to raise her, but how could she be so vicious? She joined forces with outsiders to hit her own family member. That ungrateful bastard. We should have sold her overseas as a slave." Finley wiped her tears sadly, making herself sound extremely miserable so her son would feel sorry for her. "Mom, don't cry. Take care of your health. When I meet her, I'll definitely teach this unfilial daughter a lesson for you." "How dare she hit her own grandmother?" scolded Regan furiously, not even caring that Orissa was his daughter. "Regan, my head hurts. You should come over and send me to the hospital. Do you think that I have a concussion after being beaten up by them? I feel so uncomfortable," wailed Finley. "Mom, I'm busy. Why don't you come back first?" If Regan did not have work to settle in the company, he would have accompanied his mother to her hometown. "Regan, I might die soon. Aren't you coming to keep me company? Or do you think that I'm lying to you? Let me take a picture for you. Look at how badly that bitch beat me up. Sniffling, Finley immediately took a few photos of her injuries and sent them over. When Regan saw her swollen face, he was furious. Wishing for nothing more than to kill Orissa, he quickly booked a plane ticket and rushed over to Northstream. Orissa followed Benjamin back to the hotel after ensuring that the kids were full. When they reached the suite, she instructed the kids to bathe. "Tim, I'll help you bathe, okay?" She squatted in front of Tim and gazed at him gently. "Miss York, I can bathe on my own." "You should bathe too," refused Tim. Gavin laughed secretly. "Mommy, you don't have to help us bathe anymore. We know how to bathe on our own. You should go bathe now." Gavin dragged Tim away. He then called Zachary, Oliver, and Jasper to bathe together. Orissa carried Jessie and entered the bathroom to bathe. When Benjamin saw her treating Jessie differently, he frowned. "Orissa." Pausing, she turned around and glanced at Benjamin. "What's up? Why don't you let Jessie bathe with his brothers? Why are you bathing him separately?" There was a solemn look on his face. He disagreed with Orissa being biased toward any child. Orissa was stunned. When she met his disapproving gaze, she chuckled secretly. "Jessie doesn't know how to bathe yet. It's cleaner if I help her." Orissa's response left Benjamin speechless. Then, she brought Jessie away to bathe. "Jessie still doesn't know how to bathe." Frowning, Benjamin strode toward them. Orissa had already carried Jessie into the bathroom. Benjamin planned to ask Orissa to rest while he bathed Jessie. To his surprise, the door was locked from the inside. Immediately, a grim expression crossed his face. What is she trying to do? Jessie stared at the entrance in surprise while Orissa placed a finger over her lips, signaling Jessie to stay silent. At that moment, Benjamin said, "Orissa, come out. I'll bathe Jessie." "It's fine. Jessie still isn't close to you, so she won't like it if you bathe her," replied Orissa as she shot up. "Look at Jessie." Jessie, who was very smart, immediately wailed, "No. I don't want Mr. Graham to bathe me. I want Mommy instead." "Mommy, don't let him enter. If he does, I don't want to bathe anymore." Looking at Jess's dramatic and convincing act, Orissa almost burst out laughing. Standing at the door, Benjamin fell silent. Having scared Jessie so badly that she cried, he felt bad. He coaxed softly, "Jessie, a boy shouldn't cry so easily. Since you don't like me helping you bathe, I won't enter. Let Mommy bathe you instead." Initially, Benjamin wanted to say that since Jessie was already 5 years old, she should learn how to bathe like her brothers. However, since Jessie was already crying, he could not bear to say anything else. Eventually, he had no choice but to relent. Unknown to him, Orissa and Jessie were laughing secretly in the bathroom.